Well, good morning on the West Coast. Good afternoon on the East Coast. Good evening in the UK. In Australia, what are you doing up this time of night? What is going on with you? What is happening? I almost wore my Data is the New Bacon shirt because today we're going to get some really good data, and you can always use some really good data and bacon. My guest today is Amy Jo Berman. Amy Jo, how are you?
Hey, I'm awesome. How are you?
You sound great. You look great. Everything's fantastic. So we can get that all out of the way.
Excellent.
I am really excited to talk to you because our business right now, with the writer's strike, with the impending potential Screen Actors Guild strike, people are more uncertain and nervous about their choice in life, their choices of pursuit in life, and how those things are accomplished. You know, we don't count on these kind of roadblocks in our way. And then there are the roadblocks that we put in our own way when we go to find work. And so Amy Jo, if you don't know, Amy Jo, former vice president of casting at HBO. She has hundreds of credits on IMDb. You can go check it out and see her bona fides. But the point is, Amy Jo sits on the other side of the table. And we often are thinking about our auditioning. We're being told about our auditioning by people who are performers. And yeah, every so often back in the day when there were casting workshops, you could get the, you know, what did they say? What are your do's and don'ts? What are your, you know, I like or I don't like you? Yeah. The forbidden questions to ask a casting director in a casting workshop. But what you don't really get is the lay of the land as the business is evolving. And so I've got a lot of questions today. We have questions coming in. You can ask your own questions as well. All you have to do is put them in the comments below wherever you're watching, either on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. And as it says, please do us a favor, hit the like button, share this, gather your fellow actor, voice talent with us for this session, because you can ask anything you want. And how often do you get that chance? You know, you go to an event, say Amy Jo's up on stage with a bunch of other muckety mucks in the world of casting, and you're sitting there in the audience and you're like, God, I hope I can talk to her after the thing is over and not be stupid and ask her a good question and, you know, not just say, oh, I really love your work. You know, you got a chance right now. All you have to do, if you have questions about the current state of affairs, we're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about getting paid to audition. We're going to talk about self-tapes. We're going to talk about ways to make your auditions better. And if you would like more information, Amy Jo is going to be having a webinar or 2 or 6 coming up, and you can register for one of them at voheroes.com/Berman. It's absolutely free. Go check it out. Take the one that you fits best with your schedule. But I want to start things off. If you want to tell us where you're watching from, tell us where you're in. Oh, this is going to be good all day. Sarah Marie, am I seeing that right? I'm going to have to raise the brightness on my monitor just a little bit so I can see that. There we go. So Sarah Marie says, here we go. Yay. Tell me where you're watching from. Where are you plying the actor trade? Are you here in Los Angeles? Are you in New York? Are you in London? Are you in another market across the country? Are you doing stage work, commercial work? Let me know in the comments below, and also ask your questions. So as you see what's going on, you read the Hollywood Reporter, you read the non-trades, you know, the New Yorker is weighing in on whether or not actors should get paid for auditioning. When you look at this stuff, what do you see in terms of whether or not we've gone way off the rails or we're doing just fine?
All right. I'm definitely going to answer that question. I just want to make one tiny correction because I'm a straight shooter and I just have to be honest about something. I don't have hundreds of credits on IMDb because as a casting executive, as a vice president at a studio, they didn't give us credits on
Yeah, I
screen.
noticed that. You have 3
Right.
credits on IMDb.
Yeah. So,
But
I worked
fact
on
of the matter is that you were involved in all those.
hundreds. I know.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that in case somebody goes to IMDb and goes, "Hey, wait a minute,"
yeah.
because most people don't understand that executives don't get credit on screen. Okay. Now, going back to your question about have we gone off the rails? Look, I think that the thing that most people forget is that change is happening all the time in all areas of life. There's no aspect of life that's not in constant change. Sometimes it feels like everything's a certain way, but even in the background, things are slowly changing. And sometimes we go through periods where there's rapid change or big changes, and they're right in our face. And with the advent of social media becoming such a part of our lives and the business, it's in our face all the freaking time. We really cannot get away from, look at what's happening, right? And so I think the first thing to do is breathe and relax, because change is happening. And what if that's a good thing? What if what's on the other side of the change is something that could actually help your life and your acting career? It's always the first thing to kind of assume panic mode, and I just, nothing good happens in panic mode. Especially as an artist, you cannot fully show up and embody the artist that you are when you're in fight or flight. So first thing, I think, just right. And next, just be aware of the changes. I think one of the other things that happens when you get in fight or flight mode as an actor, as a person, is sometimes you just duck and you don't see what all the things are that are going on. And I think one of the best things that actors can do is be aware of all the changes, and instead of go, oh great, ask the question, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I actually take what's already happening that I cannot control and turn it into an advantage for myself in this highly competitive business?
Okay, so being aware of the changes going on is like a theme that I just like hang on all the time, because I like you. I'm not afraid of technology. I use technology to my advantage. I won't allow it to do anything but help me. Um, when you look at these things, I want to dive right into the specifics of things that are on the minds of actors these days.
Let's do it.
First and foremost, there is this whack movement by some actors, one of whom found an obscure piece of code that hasn't been swept out of the CBA, the theatrical agreement for SAG-AFTRA, in almost a century, that was appropriate in the days when we had a studio system, when all of the actors in town worked for one studio and one studio only. It was cradle to grave. It was very different from today. And they've seized on this passage in the CBA and have decided that we've been ripped off for the last century in not being paid when we audition. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a shame you don't have an opinion on that, David.
I have no opinion
Yeah,
whatsoever.
you're so neutral about it. Look, I always like to look under the hood of something and see where it came from. I understand why actors would feel that they should get paid. After all, the onus of a lot of the day-to-day of casting has been put upon them, self-taping and all of that. And we could talk more about that in a few. But what while I understand the impulse, because you work as an actor so hard to try to get jobs, and it's even more competitive than it ever was before. I understand wanting to get paid, and you deserve to get paid for your work. I just worry that, what's going to happen is that then the studios are going to be like, well, if we have to pay everybody that auditions, then we'll only audition this many people. And then all the opportunities that you might have had, are just going to get cut down so much. That's what worries me. So if they were to actually enforce that thing, then some other thing that we're not aware of, or that hasn't been created yet, would have to be created in order to open those opportunities back up again.
Yeah,
And I don't know what that is.
I had a conversation with an actor who said, I want to get paid. And I don't care if I'm one of the people that don't get called in every so often. I don't think every so often is the right phrase to end
No.
that sentence with. I think a period is the right way. And also, I worry about DEI. I worry about diversity, equity, and inclusion. If all of a sudden, let's just say you got what you wanted, those of you who want to get paid for auditioning, uh, you know, there that line item doesn't exist in the budget. You knew the budgets when you were doing your projects, right? Was
It
there
was the
ever a line
first
item for
no.
paying actors? No.
No, I mean, the first meeting that every casting director and casting executive has at a studio after we greenlight a project is the budget meeting, where we sit down as in the studio from the studio side and decide what we're going to spend on casting, how much goes to the big starry name that they want to attach, and then what's left for everybody else. And then we have to give the bad news to the casting director that we're hired and supervised, like, hey, you now have 10 cents to cast the rest of the film. And nobody feels good about that. Just so
No.
you know, maybe the studios do, but the people who work on it are, like people like us, they
Yeah.
feel bad about it. And we fight for more. We always fight for more,
But there is no line item, and there won't
no.
be a line item for that. And so think about the idea that casting people often, I've heard them say this, I don't know if it's true or not, but they often are very excited about finding unknown talent. They're the new hot actor, actress that really takes a franchise and runs with it. In addition to working with big names and working with people that put butts in the seats and also are trustworthy on set, if you start to narrow the field of people that you see because you have to pay them, well, all of a sudden somebody's going to get lopped off of that group. And unfortunately, it may be disenfranchised and marginalized communities.
It absolutely may be. And I think it's going to be marginalized communities and everybody else as well. But marginalized communities being the ones that have been marginalized for so long and had fewer opportunities are going to get hit first, of course. And,
Right.
I think something that every actor needs to understand about casting is that casting directors always have needed confidence in you in order to cast you. And what I mean by that is, when a casting director brings you in to producers, brings you into director, or just, casts you off tape and sends you off to set, they need to feel that when they put you in front of their bosses, the producers, the director in the studio, or when they send you to set, that they're not going to get that crazy phone call from the producers or whoever going, what did you send? This person can't handle it. What were you thinking? Right? Nobody wants to get ripped a new one on the phone from their producers on set, questioning the casting director's judgment. So the casting director always is going to have a level of confidence in you. And confidence is talked about a lot in terms of casting. I talk about it all the time in terms of actors building their confidence. This is different. Casting directors need confidence in you. So if casting directors need confidence in you in order to cast you, okay, that means they need to know your abilities. They need to know that you're professional, that you know how to handle yourself in an audition situation and on set. And so if you reduce the number of opportunities, like if you say, well, you can only cast people, here's $5 to go pay people for auditions, here's a small amount of people, like the studio says, okay, if we have to pay for auditions now, here's this much money to go pay. They're going to focus on actors in whom they have the most confidence.
Yep.
So going to your point of, would that be a brand new person that they don't know? Probably not, because how could they have confidence in them? And I don't just mean confidence in their talent, I mean confidence in their professionalism and all the things. And so the amount of opportunities is just going to get reduced to those people who they already know.
Right.
And I feel terrible about that, because one of the good things that self-taping has done for this business is opened up a world of opportunities for actors that they never would have had before if they had to just be in LA or New York or whatever the big market is, and so it makes me, sad to think about a lack of opportunities in an already competitive business.
Got it. And we're going to talk about self-tapes. We're going to talk about how onerous self-tapes are. Okay. And also, what the reality is of acquiring 500 self-tapes per role, and the time that a casting director has to watch or not watch any or all of those tapes. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, synthetic voices, synthetic, deep fakes, things like that. But for right now, let's take some questions. AJB, how's it going, sir? I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. Just sent in my first audition. Yay. I'm assuming I should do the whole Ron Popeil thing. Send it and forget it. What do you tell actors to do once they've finished an audition?
Well, I tell actors before they even get to that point that they have to cultivate a lack of attachment to the outcome of anything that they do, right? And so a lack of attachment to the outcome of an audition would mean that they don't have to remind themselves to send it and forget it. They just do. Because once you hit the upload button or the send button or whatever, everything from that point on is out of your control. So if you find yourself focusing on things that are out of your control, you're going to develop all kinds of anxiousness and what I like to call mind trash, the little voice that goes, oh, they obviously didn't like you, you're not good enough, and it takes you down, right? And that's all BS in your head. So yeah, send it and forget it. Yes, but please understand, if you haven't been consistently working on cultivating a mindset that supports send it and forget it, you're going to fight with yourself about that. Right? It's important to be proactive in your acting career in so many different ways, not just in the way you prepare your audition, but also in the way that you prepare what's going on in here, that you constantly work on your mindset so that you know your value and it's not dependent on feedback or what somebody says about your audition or whether or not you get a callback or a booking. And with that, the result of that is you click send and you're able to forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a little thing that I would do out of view of the casting director when I was going in, and we'll continue to do when we go into for the occasional in-person audition. I always had a set of sides. I was always off book, but I always had a set of sides. And as soon as I was out of the room and saying goodbye, thank you so much, I would find the nearest wastebasket and tear my script up into little tiny pieces and throw them away as kind of a
symbolic gesture.
Yeah. And then go get a venti mocha at Starbucks and get my mind off of that and onto whatever the next thing is in my acting career.
Yeah.
So it's interesting in Louisville, Kentucky. Isn't it interesting that today you can be in Louisville, Kentucky and be auditioning for roles around the world? And that is in no small measure due to the fact that we've had this revolution in self-taping. Right. There are people who are, a little resistant to self-taping. Do you have any advice for those people who sit there and go, "What? They're asking me to do this to set up a space?" What do you tell people who have that attitude?
The attitude precedes the results that you're going to get. If you have an attitude that this is difficult, this is hard, it shouldn't be this way, it's not fair, all of that is going to get in the way of you showing up and being your best creative self and doing your badass audition job that you should be doing. And not only that, it's going to create anger and resentment and frustration. And none of those things serve you. Creating a self-tape setup is not rocket science. You could do it with a phone and a little clippy lamp from, from Home Depot for $10. It's, and yeah, could you spend zillions of dollars on a whole fancy setup? Sure. But why? Why would you do such a thing? The best thing that you can really do is just say, this is what's happening in the business. Going back to what we said earlier, how can I take advantage of that? I can create the best setup within my budget that I could afford and embrace that this is the way it is. And I get more opportunities now than I ever could have because of it.
Yeah. Okay. You say that, right? You say you don't have to have a spectacular setup. You don't have to spend zillions of dollars. But Amy Jo, I look around and I see what other people are doing and they look great. And I can't make my stuff look great. I don't know how to do this. This is going to hurt me. Are those people forgetting about the acting part?
I think you have to think about both these days. Like, you don't have to create an expensive setup, but you do have to be seen and be heard and have no distractions in the background. That is really simple to do. And I think that you do that once, you create it once, and then you just flip a switch and then focus on all the other things you can control in your audition, of which there are many, and of which most actors focus on the other things they can't control. And it's one of the reasons if you're stuck not booking, it's because you're focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah. Do you sit there as a casting person and see a not so well shot thing, but well auditioned for, well acted, well prepared for, and think to yourself, wow, that background, that's like, I don't know about dark red. I'm not sure. We can't cast them if they're using a dark red back now. Do you think things like that
No,
ever?
of course not. And that's not how that kind of stuff works. So the recommendation of having decent lighting and a decent audio and a non-distracting background is there because not because a casting director wants to say, oh, obviously they're using cheap lights. No, it's they want to see, you have to think about the result of it. They want to see you and take you in. So if you have a background or a setup that's distracting, or it makes them go, I can't, and they turn it up real loud, or you're all blurry and they're like, they're not going to do that because they're busy and they want to take you in. That's the whole point. So in terms of a setup, are they evaluating, will they cast you based on your backdrop? No. But if your setup doesn't allow them to see you, hear you, and take you in, they're not going to fight for that. They have a million other tapes to watch and they're going to go to the next one. I mean, that's the truth. I'd love to say every casting director watches every single tape of everyone, even if the quality sucks, even if your framing is like this and they can't see your face, even if but they need to take you in and they need to do it quickly because they have a high volume to deal with. You need to help them with that by creating the minimum bare, decent framing, decent lighting, decent audio, non-distracting backdrop as best you can, then focus on the work.
Great. You opened the door. You let the cat out of the bag here. All right, let's talk about this. I've seen it from several different comments from casting directors interviewed in the press and also speaking at events. The number of requests that they've been sending out per role over the last 2 years or so is in the hundreds per role. And they're getting these tapes ostensibly from people across the entire timeline of when they release the breakdown to when the deadline is that they say, and probably after, oh my God, I didn't get the notice. How many of these tapes are they watching? And for how long do they watch a tape that clearly the actor is not right for the role? Like in the first 10 seconds, it's clear this was a mistake.
Sometimes even when somebody's not right in the first 10 seconds, they'll keep watching because they're good and because they might like them for something else, or they might want to think about them for the future. So sometimes not being right isn't a reason for a casting director to click off. And I can't say right now that I'm going to speak for every casting director who lives and breathes, but I'm going to give you my feelings from my experience and from the colleagues with whom I've discussed this, is that casting directors try very hard to watch every single tape. They try to. They would like very much to. Some of them will sit there for their whole weekends and nights will be, sitting there watching every single tape that came in. Some of them will do that. And some of them will just have that as their goal. But, being human beings, sometimes things get in the way and they can't. And the truth is that even if they had all the time in the world, you can't watch every single tape. If you know somebody is either doesn't have the chops for the role, you're not going to usually sit there and watch the whole tape because you can tell you're not going to cast them. You watch them until I can cast them for this or something else, or you move on. And I please don't shoot the messenger here, because I'm a straight shooter and I'm not going to BS and gloss over things and say every casting director watches every tape all the time. And, but like I said, some of them do, and most of them strive to, but they also have a job to do. And, here's the thing, they could request 200 tapes by Wednesday at 5, and maybe only 100 will come in by Wednesday at 5. So the ones that come in Wednesday at 5:30 and beyond, are they obliged to watch them when they come in late? And you'd be shocked at how many come in past the deadline. And then sometimes the reality of casting is, you say the deadline is Wednesday at 5. And, you know, in the ideal world, you'd think, okay, Wednesday at 5:01, the casting director is going to sit down and start watching all the tapes that came in. But the reality is sometimes on Monday, they have an extra hour, something canceled or whatever. And they're like, oh, let me watch tapes during my lunch. So they start watching the ones that have come in. Maybe they find somebody they like. Okay, so now that person is the one to beat. And maybe they show that one to their producers, and their producers get their heart set on that person.
Yeah.
Or maybe, and this happened a lot to me when I was casting, and it happens to all my casting friends, is the deadline changes internally, meaning they lost a location and now they have to shoot the thing they thought they were going to shoot on Friday on Tuesday. So now they have to just cast from the tapes that they have. Nobody, you know, is happy about that, but stuff happens. And so there's all kinds of things like that that happen in the background that prevent every single tape from being watched, whether it's just the amount of hours in the day or other things that come up that have to take precedence. I mean, there's always a fire to put out when you're working on a film or a TV show. There's always things that are moving and changing, and deadlines are absolutely one of them.
So we've got a lot of questions coming in. You can put your question in, you who watch this, who are watching this, even if it's a replay, if you tag us. The way to do that is just put it in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube or on LinkedIn or on Facebook, just go to the comments, type in your question. We'll bring them up here. We can do that. We also have a URL up on the screen, and that's so that you can register for an absolutely free webinar that Amy Jo is doing, one of which is this Saturday. And you can schedule for whatever time works for you. It's called the Castability Factor. And if you'll see on the page when you go there, it says a casting director shares her top 10 things that you can do to make your auditions better for all intents and purposes. There are hundreds of things that you can do. These are the ones that are culled from all those things that you think are important. These are the ones that a casting person thinks are important. And that's truly the audience that you're doing your work for when you're in the audition process. So click on that link. It's also in the description for the event today. It's at the very top and at the very bottom. Click on that and go through. Sam brings up a good point, because I think that actors have a movable point of what he refers to as onerous. You know, I've gotten 12-page auditions, and that just to me is more food. It's like more stuff to look at and play with, and you know, I do what they want me to do, and I prep for it just like I would if it was internal. And I wonder if, you know, in this question, Sam says, hi from New York. I had a first call low budget project make outrageous self-tape demands that took several hours to record. Is it ever appropriate to not send them everything they ask for? And it sounds like there may be a preset mindset of this whole thing is like, forget it. This is crazy. I didn't sign up for this when I went to drama school. This self-tape thing, I don't know what he thinks is outrageous. I don't know whether the page count was outrageous or his process took several hours. I don't know. Sometimes it takes me several hours to go through the whole thing when I'm doing something, even for one scene. So I'm wondering if there's a way to approach this for Sam that you have.
Sorry, I'm just writing points of things that you said so I don't forget.
Yeah.
I love that you said more food for you. You know, it's the
Oh,
more,
God.
you know, I always talk about things in terms of like them being yummy. So I love that you refer to it as food, because it really is, you know.
Look at me. I like food.
I have a very foodie family, all kinds of chefs in my family, lots of food, love food. So, and you know, it really is. And again, like we can't tell from what Sam said here, like what it is that's taking so long, what he feels are the outrageous demands. But, you know, the thing is, if you have, if they send you a lot of material, you do the best you can with what you have and the time frame that you have. And you know, I recommend, like all my students and, you know, and the people who take my classes, that we have a kind of system to prepare, you know, a way to prep for your auditions that uses a kind of systematic framework, so you don't forget everything, so you could be more efficient with, you know. And I recommend that you do the same, because if it's taking you hours on the creative side, whether, it's a 2-page scene or a 12-page scene, then, it's possible that you're just, winging the process of prep without a very systematic way of doing it. And that ends up wasting a lot of time. Now, if the time commitment that you're talking about is from outrageous self-tape, I don't know what outrageous self-tape demands could be. Are they having you do a lot of angles, or I don't know what that means actually. So I feel like if you're looking, so maybe whatever they're doing is outrageous. I don't know, but I think going back to what you said, David, it's more like, I think that every actor should approach auditions, no matter what, as long as nothing's crossing a line, with a yes and philosophy. The first rule of improv, yes and. It's like, okay, so they just made these wacky demands. As long as they don't cross any kind of, ethical lines, then why not approach it with a yes and? Okay, they asked me to do these things. How can I do it most efficiently? How can I show up and be the most castable, best version of myself within these parameters? And how can I do it in the most efficient way so I can get on with my day or get on with my other auditions? That how can I yes and way of approaching things really changes the way you feel about doing it. And because the way you feel about doing it is going to show up in your tape, whether you know it or not. If you feel like this is outrageous, they shouldn't be asking me to do this, all of that is in there. And if you think as a creative artist, where you literally are the instrument, that's not going to show up in your audition, then you don't understand how people work, because people feel things. I mean, that's literally what you do as an actor, is you make people feel things. You think that it's just the things that you want them to feel that they're going to feel. No, they feel all this other stuff too. So if you could shift your mindset, yes, and how can I, then you're going to have a much better time. You'll be a much happier actor, and your results will be much better as well.
Yeah, I think in many cases, it's a choice, right? You come into a situation with preconceived notions. Maybe you're open to some things, but you're like, this is bullshit. This is like, how come they're not sending a car for me? How come they're not messengering over a script? I started acting in 2003, and there were still older actors in those days who were decrying that those things didn't exist anymore. And so as things change over time, you have to be able to roll with the punches. You have to be able to say, okay, this is the new normal. This is what, if I want to be competitive in this marketplace, like I think back to the days in the 30s when this code that people are talking about for the getting paid for auditions, what things were then. There was no television. We didn't have that opportunity. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have streaming channels. We didn't have any of that stuff. And now we do. So we have more opportunities, and we have more ways of also going after those opportunities. And if we choose to push back on that because we're much more comfortable with where we were and the rules that we created for where we were as opposed to where we're going to be, I think that is a potential problem. You?
Yeah. I think of it this way. This is the way I look at it. Do you remember that little pandemic that all just passed by? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that pandemic, like, I know you've been at this a long time with technology. I've been doing training with actors online since 2012, since before people really knew what Zoom was, since before Zoom was really even like a popular thing. But during the pandemic, everybody discovered Zoom, and everybody discovered going online and being virtual with each other because they had no choice, right? And for everybody out there who the first time they went on Zoom was during the pandemic, do you remember that awkward moment where you're like, oh, that's not going to be the same. And how do I do this? I have to download the what? And blah, blah, blah. And now everybody's like, yeah, Zoom, whatever, Zoom, this, then, and the other thing. It became part of the way that we do things.
Sure.
So now you can audition virtually live without being in a room. So now we have not just in-person auditions and not just self-tapes. Now we also have virtual auditions, and they all have little quirks and differences, but they all have created opportunities. And it's interesting, when everybody was, freaking out about virtual auditions and Zoom and We Audition and EcoCast and all those things in the beginning of that, which was, like 5 minutes ago or like 3 years ago, when that was all happening for the first time, I was reminding all my students, remember when you used to feel like that about self-tapes? Like, what? I have to tape myself, whatever. It's always awkward in that first moment. But, if you, instead of freaking out about it, go, oh, this is an opportunity, and it may be awkward now, and that's okay. Do you remember the first time you got behind the wheel of a car to drive, and you're like, I have to look at that mirror, and I have to look over my shoulder, this pedal, and that gear shift, and I have to do all these things while I'm in a moving vehicle at 50, 60, 70, 75, if you're in LA, miles an hour? What? Right? And then, now you drive to the airport, you don't even know how you got there. Okay. And it's just let go of that and just be like, this is going to be awkward in the beginning, but then it's fine.
Yeah.
Like everything else.
I see sometimes older actors, sometimes the youngest of actors that are anti-technology because that's their thing, approach this from a perspective of, I have to have perfection or it isn't going to work. And Michael asks, have you ever received a submission that was so bad technically that you couldn't consider an actor because of those tech issues?
Yes. I mean, if you can't see and hear them because they've framed themselves so far away that their face is this tiny in the thing, or you just cannot freaking hear them, or there's such shadow on their face that you can't take in the nuance of their expression. Yes, I'd love to say no, but I'd be lying, and I don't do that.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be.
But please, let me just say, it's not that you're not getting cast because of your bad technology. I again want to say, in that moment, you'd be not getting cast because the casting director can't take you in. Do you understand? There's the difference between the thing and the result of the thing. It's the results that we're talking about that needs to change.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people are worried about, this sucks, this is awesome. They're worried about the fact that if they're not right here, that they're not going to be seen. And the truth of the matter is that, anywhere in here is kind of okay. Yeah. Have you seen what comes out of some live casting offices? They don't have the world's best gear. They don't have the world's, they get a really nice shot, a nice, head and shoulders or two T's or whatever. They have fairly good sound. But it's not like you're on set somewhere. There's no art director creating their stuff. And if you look at some of the very famous casting tapes that have either been leaked out onto the internet or have been placed there on purpose, things like Aaron Paul auditioning for Breaking Bad or Hugh Laurie auditioning for House. Hugh Laurie is in on the camera like this, and he's like looking down, and there's nothing about that would be considered incredibly professional, but he rocked it.
Right, but you could see him and you could hear him, even though his framing wasn't good.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. It's just about that. And it doesn't have to be $100 million production. They just have to be able to see and hear you. Anybody who has a smartphone, that's all and I'm telling you, a little like clippy lamp that you clip to the side of your desk, or a tiny little thing like here, like this, a teeny little thing. You just put your little phone in this little, in there, and that's it. It doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to cost $1 million.
Yeah, but as you're looking at this space, down here is light behind you from a window so that you can't see your face. No mic on at all. I've gotten auditions. I've sat on the other side of the table. I've gotten auditions where the person didn't even check to see if they were recorded, if their voice was recorded. And I'm sure that's happened to casting directors before. It just is one of those things. If you can get in here, you're doing just fine. Yeah.
Let go of the idea of perfection. It's not going to serve you when it comes to technology, and it's not going to serve you when it comes to a performance either. Perfection is not there. There's no such thing as perfection. Let it go. You do the best you can with what you have, and make sure the result is they can see you and hear you and take you in, and that your reading is so freaking good that they just can't help but lean into it and want to sit there and watch more. And that's because of the creative choices that you made, but you've given them a physical environment that's allowed them to take you in.
Yeah. I think Romy has come in late. Does Amy think paid auditions will happen? And if so, does she think that it will greatly decrease the actors brought to a devastatingly low degree? I would urge you, Romy, to watch the replay, rewind to about maybe 5 minutes in, maybe 3 minutes in. We got right to it.
Yeah.
And Amy will answer that question for you. If you have a question, feel free, just jot it down, tap it into the comments below. We want to take as many questions as we can in the time that we have with Amy. And also take a moment, set up an appointment for yourself if you don't want to tear yourself away from this, and go to voheroes.com/Berman and register for a free webinar that Amy is holding. She has a couple of different times and days, called the Castability Factor. Again, it's free, and she'll give you her top 10 plus a whole bunch of other things, her top 10 ways to adjust your auditions to increase their quality, increase your, what she calls bookability. When I typed bookability into the description for this, Google went haywire. It's like, what is that word? What does that mean? What do you mean by bookability? Because I know you also say disconnect the outcome from the process. So if booking is the outcome you're searching for, you want to disconnect. What do you say what is your definition of bookability?
Well, I think that, yeah, you want to, let go of your attachment to the results. And of course you want to book the role. Yes. And you can be excited about booking the role. But if you just focus on, I have to book this role, it's that kind of neediness and just, that will push away energetically your ability to book. But that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about bookability or castability. What I mean is, if you can understand a casting director's point of view of what it is that they want and why they want it, and focus on that instead of what you want. What you want is to book, right? So you're like, focus with your eye on the prize of booking. But casting directors, like, if you think like them, because they're the person who's going to decide if you get a callback and get a booking. If you think about what they want instead of what you want, and I know that that's hard to do, but you'll get so much better results. And, like in the Castability Factor training, I talk a lot about that and about what casting directors want, but not just what they want, why they want it. And that's a really important distinction that I want to make. Like, a lot of times you'll go to a workshop or a thing and you'll hear a casting director say what their pet peeve is or what they like or whatever. And that's really important. But I think it's much more important to understand the why. Because if you understand why they want what they want, then you can, like, each individual casting director is going to have their likes and dislikes and the things that are important to them. You cannot go around trying to understand the likes and dislikes of each individual 500 casting directors. But if you look under the hood at why each one of them has that feeling, the whys are all the same, right? The whys cross all casting directors, and you can kind of master understanding what all casting directors want when you understand the why. And so when I talk about being bookable, I'm talking about understanding why they want what they want, and then delivering that in a very systematic way. And then you can vastly increase your chances of booking when you do that. It's just so simple. But as an artist, you're either focused so much on the creative process and the joy that brings you, which I hope you are, or you're so focused on wanting it so bad that you miss the piece in between that gives you the opportunity to have both of those things.
Yeah. All right.
I get a little passionate about this. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Tell me how far off base I am in my approach. How's that for a tee up? I couldn't care less what a casting director wants.
Well,
I know
you can enjoy your struggle then.
Well, no, hold on. Let me explain. It's not that I don't care to give them something that helps them serve their team and the story and the character and the production. I think it's a fool's errand to try and figure out the secret, thing that they want in your performance that's going to make them book you. I feel like my job is to do what the character wants. My job is to do, what the creepy evil villain that I often play wants to get out of the hero. That's my job. The casting director might have some preconceived notions about it, but I can't tell you how many times I book things where the director or the casting person has said to me, dude, I don't know where you got that from, but that's not what we had in mind when we just said, okay, good, you're the one.
Well, yes, and please, I need to make this distinction. When I say understand what casting directors want, I mean what what they want in its entirety, not what they want out of that specific script and that specific scene and that specific choice. There is no one right audition. If you keep seeking out the thing that you think they want in this scene, they want you to do, the choice that they want you to make, the way that they want you to make it, and the way that they want you to be in that scene. If you think that there's the one in their mind and you keep trying to seek it, you're going to miss all the other things that could have developed in you creatively along the way. You're going to miss your opportunity to create the unique character and the unique choices that only you can make. And the truth is, yes, a casting director has an idea of what they want when, of course, because they're human beings, they read the script, they visualize it, and it's their job to kind of imagine the role. Yes. But the reality is they're hoping and praying that you're going to come in and bring them something they never imagined. And I cannot tell you how many times I have cast actors, and so have all my casting friends, that have brought something that you're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Yes. Did you see that? We got to have him. Like, that's what you want. So stop trying to please them. When I say understand what they want, I mean, understand it in a bigger picture way and understand how to specifically deliver unique choices. But get out of your head that you have to, please, I'll do it the way you say. If you do all of that and just learn how to find the unique choices, because
Great.
that's what they want.
Yeah. We got time for a few more questions. If you want to jump in and type them in the comments below, we'll try to squeeze them in before our time with Amy is up. Go to voheroes.com/Berman. There you will be able to save your seat, reserve your spot for the Castability Factor, which is a free webinar that she's doing coming up here in the next few days. This weekend is the first one. We are going to venture into an area that is divisive, that is to some people an existential threat, to others a kind of a double-edged sword. Artificial intelligence, synthetic voices, deep fakes. Let me start this question off. Do you think there are people working at breakdown services right now that are using ChatGPT to create the breakdowns for characters and for the shows that they're doing? Or do you think they will in the future? And is that like the camel's nose under the tent?
Look, I don't have a crystal ball or a spy over at breakdown services, so I can't tell you what they're doing or not doing. I can tell you that that AI can help people do their jobs better sometimes, when it comes to writing things and summarizing things and all that. But, I played around with it a lot. I think it's really interesting. I never put out content that it creates, but I play around with it in the back part of my business and, whatever. And I've noticed that, when it comes to summarizing things or whatever, like it can really get like some major points, but it misses the nuance and the voice and all those things. So I hope that if breakdown services is using it, and I have zero idea if they are, that they are not doing it without human intervention, putting the final edits and finishing touches on it to grab the human nuance that only a human at this point in time can have,
So that was kind of a lead-in using you happen to be open to technology, and there are a lot of people who aren't. There are a lot of people who are frightened of it. That was to illustrate that there are some things that you can do with artificial intelligence that could help you. It's a technology. It's neutral in how you use it. Are you concerned that deep fakes, synthetic movements, synthetic voices could end up replacing actors entirely? And should we be concerned about that?
Look, I think there's not a human being on the planet that's not concerned about that, because it's possible, I suppose. I mean, I don't know, I think that I hope that doesn't happen, because I really cannot imagine an artificial intelligence that's going to have that which only a human being, that thing, I can't imagine that being, I can't imagine it being like that. And I certainly hope that, when the studios use this, which they already are, to some degree, right, and have been for a while, that they, number one, credit, like that actors get paid for what's being generated from them. That's the most important thing. Like I really can't imagine in a world in which, actors don't exist, but I really can't. I don't want to watch that movie. Do you?
Yeah.
So, look, nobody has a crystal ball about these things, but of course everybody's, and I think the most important thing, like just to bookend what we talked about earlier, is to stay on top of the news and what's going on and not get caught up in hyperbole and freaking out, and just be aware of what's going on. And, when it comes to the negotiations with the actors union that are coming up, hoping that SAG gets into that and gets actors what they need to protect themselves.
Yeah, they've already put out statements. I'm on 2 committees that are working on policies, and not just policies like this is what we think about this, but this is what we're going to do about this. And just recently they made a very clear statement saying union members should not engage in any contracts that allow for their voice to be sampled, their faces to be sampled without union involvement. As this develops, they want to be ahead of it and make sure that we as actors are protected. So know that about SAG-AFTRA. Want to jump back real quickly to the choices that we make when, and this is something that this kind of borders, love you, Melissa, but this kind of borders on the, what's the secret? What are the things that I can do in terms of unique choices? Do you have any examples?
Well, yeah. Well, let me talk about it this way. First of all, this is something that we go into in great detail on my Castability Factor training. We'll be talking a lot about how to do that and what are the different ways that you can do that and all of that. But I want you to think of it like this. And I'll talk about this a lot more in the training too, but I'll share it with you here. When you get a script and you read that script for the first time, right away your ideas are popping, right? That's just the way it happens. Oh, I'll do this. Oh, I'll do that. Oh, I can see it this way. And what most actors do is they do that, right? They just read the scene the way that it just popped to them the first time. When you do that, know that every other actor who got that script most likely had those certain things that jumped out at you, that jumped out at them the exact same way. And it creates this really weird phenomenon that when a casting director is watching 100, 200 tapes, 198 of the 200, every actor made the same choice at those certain moments. And it's the weirdest thing to watch, because you think, did everybody just like talk to each other ahead of time and say, hey guys, we're all going to do this, right? And so I think that instead of like, what are the examples of unique, we could be here all day. I have a whole course devoted to that. But, think of it this way. If the next time you get a set of sides, you read them, and whatever that first moment is that jumps out at you, if you could stop and notice in that moment, hey, that thing, okay, everybody else is going to do that. How can I make that moment just a tinge different, a little unique? What are the different ways that I could go about trying something else in that moment, so that the way that I do it could be unique? Simple things like that. And there's a lot of other ways to do it. But if you just understand that one phenomenon, you're leaps and bounds ahead.
Would it be fair to say that most actors are afraid of being themselves, that they're afraid of bringing themselves to the party? When you talk about how can I make this different, it's not about reaching out into the outer limits and finding something, but how about having the faith that what you would do with that is different and is yours, and not be afraid of doing that particular thing?
Sorry, here's the thing. Not being afraid to do what's yours. Like, so let's just say you got that script, David, and you read it and you're like, oh, that's that moment. Oh, I'm going to do this, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't be true to yourself and do that thing. But do you understand there's infinite ways for you as an actor to do that moment? And if you get locked into doing just that thing the way you thought of, and you're like, but that's the way I would do it, I'm going to challenge you to go, there's 150,000 other ways to do that moment. And just start trying things, because it's getting locked into that thing. Of course they want to see you, the authentic you, the way that you bring something different to the party. But you're not supposed to just create weird unique moments just to stand out. Nobody wants to see that. Okay. They want to see you, the actor, trying things and finding something. I guarantee you, if you take one moment, any one moment in a scene, and you just challenge yourself to do one line 50 different ways, challenge yourself, and it's going to get hard at a certain point, but you're just going to keep trying, you're going to find a couple, if not more, ways that that moment could be unique to you and be authentic to you. And I'm not saying you have to do that 50 times for every single line, but I just want to challenge you to break out of the idea that the way that you thought of it is the first time is the only way to do it authentically to you. That's BS. You know, challenge yourself to go beyond, and you'll stand out. And that's what it's all about, standing out in the right way as you.
Okay. Amy Jo Berman, who is just brilliant at phrasing things in a way that actors understand, because she loves actors. She loves actors not just as a group of people to teach, a group of people who follow her and want to know what she knows, but just in general, you kind of have to love actors to be a casting director. I've seen some casting directors, very few, who I'm wondering why they're casting directors, because their approach to actors is not the most supportive, not the most loving, but it's clear that you adore actors. Is this something that you had to develop, or is it something you just...
I mean, I think it comes from the fact that I started out as an actor. And I think that, of course, because I understand your process as an actor, I know what you go through and I know how you go through it and what you do. I have a sympathy for that, you know, and, you know, what's really interesting, and not every casting director has to have been an actor in order to have a love and passion for helping actors and, you know, getting a performance out of them. I think it definitely helps in being able to communicate with you in your own language. But it's not absolutely necessary. But I think that one of the things is coming from a place of having been an actor and then coming from another place of having been a casting director, having been on both sides of the table, I really understand what it's like from your side and how all of your stuff shows up to them on the other side. And then I have another kind of unique way of looking at it too, because I was also a studio executive. I can big picture see it in a way that even a casting director often can't, because I understand from the studio side how those things show up and affect your ability to get approved, or, you know, or it's just a different perspective. That extra added scope and layer of things. And so I think the combination of those things, and just, you know, this is my heart. You know, when I left HBO, a lot of people, you know, I got some offers to be managers, and, you know, a talent agency approached me to switch, you know, to the other side. And then I got asked by a lot of people, you're going to like hang out your own shingle and be your own casting director and like your own thing outside of that. And at that point, I had already developed this kind of desire to mentor actors, just because I had already started my YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff in the response. And I realized that I felt, and this is going to sound a little corny, but I felt like I had more of a calling to do something else, to share more than I could just by casting, about the process and about helping actors. And I felt like that was the next thing after 20 years of doing this one thing, that this was the thing I was meant to do next, was to take all of that and bring it here, open up the doors in a way that haven't been opened before, or not in the way that they've been opened, and give you entry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, to that point, we got together today to talk about the things going on in the business, to talk about your webinar that's coming up. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned to you or asked you about that you really feel is crucial to an actor in June of 2023 to know? I just want to give you the opportunity to think about that for a moment and share what you think is really, really essential, that a lot of actors are not really paying much attention to, or some actors aren't paying attention to their peril.
I think that, you know, right now we're in a time in the business where there's a natural slowdown due to an unnatural strike, right? And so this is a moment where a lot of actors will panic because things get slower. And I think a real, what I would call an unstoppable actor would take this moment in time to go, how can I grow my acting career regardless of what's going on in the business? A strike is, definitely a reason for a slowdown, but other slowdowns happen here and there. And what I think the biggest mistake that I see a lot of actors make is that they wait until opportunity comes to prepare for the opportunity. So they wait until they get an audition, whether that's in a week or a month or a year. When they get it, they go, oh, I got to prepare. That's the exact wrong time to have been working. Like, working on your audition craft is something you can't cram for it. It's not a test where you can memorize all the answers and spit them out in an audition the next day. It's a creative process that takes time. It's like learning a language. You can't read the French English dictionary and be fluent by the end. You have to practice it. It is a craft. And the same thing with audition technique. You cannot cram for it. And so this is something you should be working on a consistent basis, because you never know when the opportunity is coming. And they either come fast and furious, or there's a long stretch of time in between, and you don't know when they're coming, which means you have to be prepared to go, when they come. And so going back to this moment in time, June 2023, there's a slowdown. This is, while that's not ideal, you want the opportunities and the shooting and all that to be happening. You have to look. Here's where we are. We have this moment in time where, while you should be working on your craft all the time, why not work extra hard on it now? You have the time for it. There's no excuse, right? And not only is there no excuse, there's a grand opportunity in front of you to learn how to stand out and be memorable, set yourself apart from this, all the other people auditioning for the roles that you will be auditioning for. And if they're not going to be, working on their thing, doing this prep and working on their craft to become better, which some of them will and some of them won't, but you can't control that. You can control yourself. You can get in tip-top shape so that when the business turns back on again, you're like, boom, you are ready to go, because those opportunities are coming. You just don't know when.
Yep. Really well said. Amy Jo Berman, my guest today, former vice president of casting at HBO. And she's going to be doing a webinar this weekend and a few other dates as well. You can pick which ones you want. It's free. It's called the Castability Factor. You can get to it by going to voheroes.com/Berman. That'll take you right there. You can sign up. I can't imagine you not wanting to take advantage of the experience that Amy Jo has, the way she has to share this stuff with you. The love that she has for actors, and the joy that she has when she can help an actor do better and be more bookable in doing the auditions. I want to take a moment and thank you. Yes, did you have something?
Yeah, there was just one other thing that I meant to say before that I think is really important, is that there's always, especially with the advent of self-tapes and virtuals, auditions and whatever, like, there's oftentimes from actors that they want feedback. You want feedback, you're not getting it, right? And you think that that's the thing that's holding you back. And I want to free you from that, because you don't need feedback in order to be your best. Okay. Yes, sometimes you want to get an adjustment if a casting director wants to give you one, but that's not the thing that's going to get you the role. Understanding how casting directors operate is kind of like when I'm sharing on the Castability Factor training, is the tweaks and the adjustments that I'm giving you on this training are the things that will help you be able to adjust your own auditions like a casting director would if they were in the room with you. And it's such a tremendous power when you can do that for yourself. You can free yourself from the need for feedback, right? And show up doing that first take as if it were your last take.
Great. The role of a casting director, I can't stress this enough, is not to be your coach. It's not to be your teacher. It's to help you find work and to see if you're right for a role. Let them do their job. I so appreciate you spending the time with me today and with us today. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the Castability Factor. The link that's right there on your screen We'll take you right there and you can register for it. And if you have questions, you can ask Amy that as well. You'll have time to ask questions
Yes.
in the webinar. So please do that. Do me a favor before you leave today and hit the like button, share this with your friends. If there's anything here that really resonated for you, put it in the comments below. Give us your #1 takeaways. And do visit the link of voheroes.com/Berman. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward to working with you more in the future.
Yeah, that's always fun hanging out with you, David. Thanks for having me.
You. Thank you. All right, everybody, see you later. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.